the studios of AM 950 KTNF, the progressive voice of Minnesota, and airing on WCPT 820, Chicago's Progressive Talk. Welcome to The Gailey Show, the only daily LGBTQ radio news and talk show in the United States. I'm your host, John Parker, joined in studio by my executive producer, Jim Pounds.
Hey, y'all.
Also streaming on our YouTube channel right now. And if you like what we're doing, click that subscribe button and leave us a comment. All right. Yes, Jim.
I have a question. Am I your guest for Unpack This for me?
Well, let me do my intro. Wow. So this is usually the time of the week where we do our regular Unpack This for Me episode, where we invite a guest in and we talk about an issue from their view of expertise of what's happening in the world today affecting the LGBTQ and allied community. This week, we've been preempting The Gailey Show as we've been doing AM 950 coverage of Operation Metro Surge, the murder of Alex Jeffrey Preddy. And so today, what I wanted to do was something a little bit different, which was to look at all of the various court cases that have been happening, and not just related to Minnesota, but that have been happening in Chicago, that have been happening nationally, to get a sense of where we are in the legal landscape. Because there's so much happening so fast that we're just sort of, it's even hard for me to keep up. So I thought, hey, let's take an hour to really dive into this. And I know you're probably sitting there and going, oh my God, like legal stuff. This is going to be so dry and boring. But there is actually a pretty shocking story here of how persistent this administration is not only lying to the public, but being called out for lying in the courtroom. And so, and again, there may be some of you that are sitting there, particularly progressive listeners who are longtime listeners of AM 950 and WCPT that are going, John, this is not breaking news. It is not breaking news, but the scope of it is, in the sense of understanding what we need to do as progressives, as queer folks, as queer progressives and allies moving forward here, as we don't know what is going to happen with Operation Metro Surge here in the Twin Cities. But we do need to have a sense of how are we going to get accountability. And we can't have a sense of the level of accountability we are going to need until we are able to look at the full scope of lying that is happening here, Jim.
Well, and I want independents, and I'm sure there are some independents who listen to this station and some who maybe don't vote, although I hope there are none of you left, but I don't think there's any conservatives here. But I think for all the people that aren't clearly progressive, you should be thinking about this in a different way. I've been thinking about you a lot for the last 8 weeks, and that is what kind of response are you having? In other words,
by you mean independent voters.
Independents and people that don't vote and that don't think government's important. I don't know, whatever the argument is, people that don't want to hear about it. I talked to somebody the other day in Wisconsin who said, I haven't been paying attention to it because it's just so awful. Well, that's the reason you have to be paying attention to it. So for you folks that are sort of underinformed and not very engaged, you need to hear the level of this because you probably still think the courts are protecting us. Nobody's going to let anything bad happen. And none of those things are true. So your family, your neighborhood, somebody up in Maine is in grave danger because they're not paying attention and they don't know the scope of how bad this is. So however unpleasant it isn't to listen to, it is self-defense. It's like taking a self-defense class. So I'm glad that you're going to go into these cases, John. Some of it is dry, but all of it is, frankly, a matter of life or death. And as far as I'm concerned, if you are a truth person, you're on the good side of things. If you're a congenital liar, whatever you're lying about, you're one of the bad people. That's a real easy way to take somebody's temperature.
It's a little oversimplistic.
No, it's not.
But there is okay, let's just start with we know that they are telling us to not believe our eyes, right? We've seen the videos of Renee Nicole Good's murder and they're like, nope, What you see is not what happened. Okay. And then when they murdered Alex Jeffrey Preddy, again, 7 videos now, and seemingly more to come, or potentially more to come, where they're telling us that what you're seeing there, that didn't actually happen. Okay. They are taking this MO of telling people that things that we see on video is not happening into the courtroom. So a local Fox affiliate, Fox 9 here in the Twin Cities, they dove into testimony around what Gregory Bovino was doing in Chicago last fall, right? And it was part of a civil suit filed against DHS. And Bovino was questioned under oath, during which Judge Sarah Ellis, in that case, said he is not credible in direct quotation from Judge Ellis's opinion. She went on to write, quote, Bovino appeared evasive over the 3 days of his deposition, either providing cute responses or outright lying. Now, of note, in this report that they did, Fox 9, they show us actual video of the deposition. And the interrogators are showing Bovino a video of him tackling an individual to the ground and arresting him. And they said, this is what's in the video. And Bovino looks at the video and says, no. The interviewer then asks, quote, did you not tackle him? And Bovino says, no. Now, you have to realize they're all in that room looking at the same video. And he's saying, no, that didn't happen. So he's asked a third time to acknowledge. He's asked, do you acknowledge that you tackled this man on video? And Bovino goes, no. So this MO is what they're taking into the courtroom. And it's very important for us to know that if they're lying to us about not just Renee Nicole Good's murder, not just Alex Jeffrey Preddy's murder, now they're lying in court about video evidence. And this is a pattern of behavior. And where I think it's really important right now to pay attention to that is that they claim, now this has not been independently verified, they claim that 4 of the agents involved in the murder of Alex Preddy had body cams on and that they were actually recording. They claim, DHS, that they're reviewing that footage. They claim that they are going to turn it over to other investigators per protocol, et cetera, et cetera. But they're making those claims on, wait for it, Fox News. So the fact that people are reporting this as if it's a fact and that it's going to happen and that we're going to see these videos, I think is very, at least from a journalism perspective, very irresponsible. Like, we should not expect that, A, these videos exist until they're independently verified. B, the footage they released, is that going to be the total footage, or are they going to try to manipulate the video? And I'm not saying that as somebody who is wearing a tinfoil hat. Like, I don't want to be, a conspiracy theorist here, but they are known for manipulating evidence. Jim, your reaction while I pull up another example of them manipulating evidence.
Well, I think what we all have to do, maybe you keep thinking we're in 1990 and that you can trust the government or something, whatever. I think we all have to be responsible as voters, as citizens, for trying to pursue the truth. Well, what do we think? Not what did somebody tell us? Yes, I'm getting told things too, but I've got some responsibility to say, well, what do I think was going on for the things that I don't know? One thing that's new from what you just said, John, is that everybody's been saying they don't have body cameras on, even though they've been provided with them and they're supposed to be wearing them. Now we hear from DHS, oh yeah, the 4 of these guys had body. Well, so there's a contradiction. I don't know who's wrong. I don't know who's lying, but it's not the same thing we've been hearing. For a long time, we were told, for weeks, we've been told that ICE had arrested 3,000 people in this stupid operation. Bovino the other day, Baby Bovino, I call him, said, we've arrested 10,000 people. That's a contradiction. That's not the same thing we've been told all along. And whenever you hear those moments, you've got to stop and say, I want to know what I want to know what the truth is. And John, you're very good at going and finding multiple opinions. He found, like he said, he found 7 videos. I don't know that a lot of the people on the national news have looked at all 7 videos, but
Well,
John Parker has.
They are.
Slowly.
They are, and it's starting. I mean, you're taking us the conversation into a different thing here, and
Okay.
I guess I just want to circle that and come back into what we're talking about today, which is the legal cases. But it's very, I feel like, traumatic, and I'm not using that word lightly, but we are literally sitting here poring over these videos frame by frame by frame and zooming in and circling things, and it's just, this is a man's murder that we're looking at, and we're just looking at it over and over and over again, and it just, for me, I'm almost getting to the point now where I'm like, I don't want to watch the videos anymore, because I'm starting to feel personally like this is like disrespectful to Preddy. Like, there needs to be an investigation, but do we all need to be looking at these videos? I think that's an ethical question that we need to be asking about right here. But I want to get back to the doctoring of evidence and how it is actually potentially going to harm them in a case that they're making against Nekima Levy Armstrong. Now, Nekima Levy Armstrong was one of the organizers of the protest that happened in the church in St. Paul, where one of the pastors there was leading ICE efforts, right? Is working for ICE. So they went in, right, and this was a big deal for the Department of Justice. Oh, their civil rights are being violated. Their civil rights are being violated. Their right to worship is being violated here. And they issued 3 arrest warrants, and they arrested Nekima Levy Armstrong. Now, Nekima is well known as a lawyer, as an activist, lots of different opinions about her and her work. She ran for mayor in Minneapolis a few years ago. And we're going to talk here, because I have to fit in a break. When we come back, we're going to talk about how they were doctoring evidence in that, and how it might have just torpedoed their case. So you are listening to The Gailey Show. You can keep the conversation going on our Blue Sky. We are at thegaileyshow.org on Blue Sky, and you are listening to us on AM 950, the progressive voice of Minnesota, and WCPT 820, Chicago's progressive talk. Welcome back to The Gailey Show. I am John Parker. We are coming up on the bottom of the hour. I'm here with my executive producer, Jim Pounds. For this week's episode of Unpack This For Me, we are literally unpacking a variety of court cases that are demonstrating the full depth of how the Trump administration, and specifically the Department of Homeland Services and ICE and Border Patrol, all within that, are persistently lying to the public, to the courts, and that they are establishing a pattern of behavior here. And even the pattern of behavior is torpedoing their own cases, right? So in the first segment, we were talking about how Bovino is going into these court cases and lying about video evidence and saying what you're seeing there is not what's actually happening. Well, here in another case against Nekima Levy Armstrong, who was one of the people who organized the protest at the church in St. Paul against the pastor who was an ICE director, or works for ICE. Don't know if he was don't quote me on him being a director. I have to look that up. After her arrest, the White House posted a video of her being escorted out in handcuffs, crying, like this wail on her face. Right. But then Armstrong and her legal team release a photo, and that's not actually what happened at all. She had a very neutral face on as they were walking her out of the building. And now folks are going, well, wait, this is demonstrating that you had bias in what's going on here. And this is the problem, is that the prosecution, the DOJ in this instance, can't make statements or social media posts that can influence what the jurors, the prospective jurors, are going to feel about a case. There's actually like a whole professional code of professional conduct with the Bar Association that prohibits this. And I think what's really interesting, and Jim, I'll get your reaction here in a second, is when the White House confirmed to CNN that, yes, they had indeed doctored and manipulated that photo, they said, quote, it was Daniel Dale talking to CNN, quote, enforcement of the law will continue, the memes will continue. And so it just starts to feel like all they care about is how this plays on TV. Jim?
Well, this is, somebody said it, maybe you said it this morning, this is a television presidency. The superficiality of how most of this administration conducts itself, with the underlying evil of some of the worst human beings on this round thing we call Earth. That's what's really driving it. But all the stuff on the top is playing to an audience of what they think are morons, idiots, haters, dumbbells. You know, they're gosh, I keep mentioning David Pecker because one of the people that Donald Trump has always admired was David Pecker, who put out the National Enquirer. In other words, the most outrageous nonsense, but it made people look. They wanted to hear about the Martian that landed in the pool. Well, what was that all about? Where did that happen? And so there must be some human behavior, sort of, what is that? Ignorant. It's like the dog that goes, oh, rabbit, you know, whose attention is taken away by the next distraction. Because this administration, going back to 2016, always worked on a daily distraction, another piece of nonsense, another threat, another outrageous claim, another piece of baloney, so that you never get your bearings. And so I think every time I hear something, I've never felt this way about the federal government. I thought some people were better at it than others, but I've never seen a group of people with so much disrespect, frankly, for the American people, whether they're conservative, whether they're independent, whether they're liberal, it doesn't matter. They have huge disrespect. And that goes back, you can track that back to the Nazis were the same way. We'll tell them what to think. Putin, we'll tell them how to feel. We'll tell them what's going on. And we'll force them to believe us because we'll scare the crap out of them. Well, you're seeing that, an American version of that being played out with little Stephen Miller hiding out on a military base because he wouldn't be safe out amongst the rest of us. So I think we have to pull back from however we normally used to react to the federal government, and we should have been doing that for some time now, and say, what do I think is going on? Jim, what do you think is going on? Not that I have all the answers, and no, that neither does anybody else, but I don't accept what I'm told at face value. I don't repeat, and I see people doing this online, I don't repeat whatever, like people were saying, never walls. You give them a stupid 3-word thing to say, and you find all these people online saying the same thing. You know, like they're in a conga line. They're not thinking for themselves. I'll bet you've got relatives, friends, neighbors, coworkers who do that. And I'm saying, think about it for yourself. Take everything with a huge grain of salt and try to find somebody you trust. I hope it's the Gailey Show or somebody else, and try to get deeper than that headline or that clickbait or whatever that nonsense is. So, and you're pointing out why they shouldn't trust what the administration says, because we've never seen lying like this before. These are lying liars and the lies they tell. So protect yourself by sitting up like a big boy and big girl and
the
be an
point
adult.
That we're making here is that we see how they immediately demonized as terrorists Renee Nicole Good and Alex Jeffrey Preddy, like they were terrorists, they were going to massacre. Here in this case, you know, Kristi Noem is getting out on social media saying the church riots in St. Paul, Minnesota, right? So they are immediately trying to manipulate the court proceedings by telling jurors, look, this was a riot. We're telling you right now, this is a riot. Right. We're creating these photos, doctoring these photos of one of the defendants as wailing. Oh, look how she was responding to this. this is not how the legal system is supposed to work, but we know that. We all know that. If you're listening to the show right now, you know that.
Right.
But the level to which they are doing it is a pattern of behavior. What we're seeing here in Minnesota is not something that they are only doing here. They've been doing it
Right.
everywhere that they have been forced to be in court.
Right.
And we're going to talk about a story when we come back here where a judge has had it with them and is threatening to actually sanction the Trump administration with sanctions, contempt sanctions, when we come back. We're going to have to fit in a break here. I want to let folks know that it's really important to support AM 950 Radio and WCPT 820 as well. So listen to these sponsors in this upcoming break and make sure that you buy with them, shop with them, do business with them. But even if you can't do that, please find them on social media and give them some love and say, thank you for supporting AM 950. Thank you for supporting WCPT 820. I heard you on The Gailey Show, or I heard you on Choose Views with Richard Chu. I heard you on Patty Vasquez or Matt McNeil, because that is really important for developing community right now. Like, we need to know and hear from folks who are supporting our work, and we support, and we're very grateful for all of the sponsors coming up, and not just this break, but all of our breaks during the Gailey Show. So stay tuned. More after this supportive break. Welcome back to the Gailey Show. I am John Parker. We are coming up on 33 minutes after the hour. Typically, this is our weekly Unpack This For Me episode, and we are unpacking a series of legal cases and the depth to which the Trump administration is lying to us, but also lying to the courts. And so this next story does come here out of Minneapolis, but it is about how U.S. District Judge Patrick Schiltz has had enough with the Trump administration. And earlier this week, he ordered that the head of ICE, Todd Lyons, appear in his courtroom tomorrow, on Friday. He said that it is that ICE and Lyons have been repeatedly defying judges' orders in Minnesota. So not just his, but other ones. And he said in a 3-page order from this past Monday, quote, "The court's patience is at an end." Now, interestingly, Schiltz is a Bush appointee, Bush II appointee. And he said in his order that the administration has been slow walking or outright defying the directives of many Minnesota judges. So again, we're looking at the scope here. It's not just a single judge where they don't like his particular or her particular ruling. It's multiple judges throughout Minnesota, including one of Judge Lyons. And he said in his ruling, quote, "The practical consequence of respondents' failure to comply has almost always been significant hardship to aliens, many of whom have lawfully lived and worked in the United States for years and done absolutely nothing wrong." Goes on to write, quote, "The detention of an alien is extended, or an alien who should remain in Minnesota is flown to Texas, or an alien who's been flown to Texas is released there and told to figure out a way to get home," end quote. Now, I was looking this up. I'm like, why are they saying alien in here? Apparently, that's legal jargon in there. I find it to be very stigmatizing. But there are other judges. U.S. District Judge Michael Davis, who is a Clinton appointee, accused the administration of, quote, "an undeniable move to defy court orders or at least to stretch the legal process to the breaking point in an attempt to deny non-citizens their due process rights." And so, Jim, I want to get your reaction to this because it's another thing I want to look up here, and I want to make sure that I quote it correctly. So your reaction to I mean, they're dragging in Todd Lyons tomorrow in front of the court, and they're threatening contempt sanctions.
Yeah, this is a lawless administration who do attempt to use norms and laws to their benefit and then deny them to everybody else. Now, I know court stuff can be exhausting. Why does something take years? I agree with a lot of that criticism. But when they can take away your right to peacefully protest, because goodness knows Kyle Rittenhauser thought he had every right to walk around with his big gun and nobody shot him. He had every right to, I don't even think he had a permit to carry that thing. But anyway, the point is, the credibility is that the same rules have to be applied to everyone, right, left, or nothing in the middle. And when they are inconsistently applied, you're not on a level playing field. And that creates suspicion, and that creates conflict. And when the right uses arguments that the left have made and they pervert it to their point of view, for example, saying that people's religious rights in a non-secular country, by the way, are more important than an average citizen's rights. Sorry, kiddos, the religious folks can all get in their van and go away because your rights are only for you individually to practice your religion in your little hovel as much as you want to. But when you come into my space,
I do want to.
You don't have those rights. So that's what frustrates me, is that they take a legal argument for saying everybody has rights, and they try to give themselves a right to do something against the Constitution. Does that make sense?
No, I think you're getting at is religious exemptions.
Well, I'm saying the contradiction of trying to use legal precedent or legal concept to justify something they're doing that's illegal. I think that's pretty clear. And it is frustrating to anybody that believes in the law, and I know you do, John.
Well,
we need to
obviously
we always need to
all
get
do.
through more cases and make it happen quicker. There's a lot of things that could be done to improve courts. I agree with that, but you can't do what Donald Trump has done his entire adult life, which is try to play the courts for fools. I'll just keep putting up, I'll do one motion and I'll do another one and I'll make some other bull crap up and I'll find some terrible lawyer that'll submit this thing. Hell, he's found terrible judges, incompetent judges. The woman in Eileen, what's her name, in Florida. He's found the worst people to then be in the American legal system, I think, as a mockery for the American legal system, out of his complete disrespect for it. But he's escaped. He's escaped almost in hundreds and hundreds of times. People have been trying to hold him accountable. He's escaped. But he's a criminal without question, and he is running a criminal administration without question. Now, nobody can say that right now because they're all trying to kiss his finger to get him to back off. But that's the truth. And there isn't an intelligent person in this country that can make an argument that he hasn't played the court system against itself for decades and made fools out of him. Frankly, he made a fool out of Comey. He's made fools out of so many judges and prosecutors. It's not even funny.
Yes, he personally. I do want to kind of
rein me back in.
Well, to a point that you said earlier, I want to acknowledge that there has been a very strong interfaith coalition, partially led by Isaiah, Minnesota, that has been on the front lines here in the Twin Cities and the larger state of Minnesota to fight back against Operation Metro Surge and ICE's tactics here. They have been doing sit-ins at Target. They staged a huge protest at Terminal 1 of Minneapolis St. Paul International Airport this past Friday. They have been going after a number of high level people to say, why are you supporting this? Why are you not speaking out against this? If they've been silent, they've been having meetings with, like they got a meeting with the CEO of Target. We haven't heard back yet what was accomplished or not accomplished in that meeting. But I want to be very mindful that there has been a very strong, robust interfaith response to what is happening here.
The last 2 weeks have been phenomenal. 6 weeks of abject silence, and the last 2 weeks have been phenomenal.
But
And I would agree with
I
you.
wouldn't. I want to be mindful that you're not lumping in MAGA Christianity with
Well,
other
no,
faith
I
traditions
wanted to
here
hear
in
I
the
wanted to hear
United
common
States.
sense religious people, not Matt McNeil, who's a person I love, just a person. I'm saying people with authority. You had the Pope showing more spine than anybody in a religious leadership position in the United States. It was unbelievable. I couldn't believe I was applauding the Pope and thinking, and the lady in Washington, D.C., the minister in Washington, D.C., and that was it. Where was everybody else
I
for
think
6
there's
weeks?
been
Thank you for showing
locally
up. I appreciate it.
there locally have been folks that just haven't gotten the same level of press
Perhaps
that other people have been
we should
getting.
have them
When you're
on.
the national archbishop, or I'm blanking on her official title, in DC,
Yep.
and also a member of the community.
Yep.
When you have the Pope saying anything,
Yep.
that
Is
leads to.
astonishing.
But I also want to note, and I don't know if this was at the direction of the Vatican or not, but there have been a number of Catholic priests, whether they're operating against or in line with what the church wants, they have been going
That's great.
to immigration hearings, and they have been supporting people there and bearing witness to what's going on there. So it's just those folks are not getting the same level of press
I'm
attention
sure.
than the MAGA Christian pastors who have 50,000 people in their audiences every Sunday.
Sitting in their cars listening. The reason it's important is because all of our other institutions have failed us. Government in some ways, legal in some ways, corporations almost completely. So I'm not just throwing religious institutions under the bus. The American people are out here going, where is the common sense? Who's standing up for us? And in Minnesota, we finally said, well, I guess we're going to have to do it.
I'm not disagreeing with any of that. I want to bring us back into what this episode is supposed to be about, which
Okay.
is the law.
Yes.
And there is another thing happening here within our district. So all of the courts, right, are divvied up into districts. And the one that deals with us here in Minnesota, there are 7 full-time judges. There are 10 partially retired judges. And apparently, and this is analysis by Politico, in all but a handful of their cases, and I'm quoting from a direct article here, the judges have ruled that the Trump administration violated the law, sometimes flagrantly. And these are judges that were appointed by Trump, Biden, Obama, Bush, Clinton, all the way back to Ronald Reagan, expressing alarm in their opinions and what they're saying during these hearings of a pattern of defiance by the administration. The pattern of very shocking behavior, according from this article, by ICE, and rampant targeting of people with no criminal history as well, right? This is supposed to be about the worst of the worst. This is supposed to be about going after people who have been violating the law. And yet here we have judges throughout this district, not just one activist judge, but all of them saying, wait a minute, you are not only defying court orders, but the behavior that you're engaging in is, their words, shocking. And they are now completely swamped in this part of the legal system here in the United States by cases that are being brought by DHS against people, but also by people who are being targeted or wrongfully detained, or alleging that they have been wrongfully detained, or that their civil rights or their just regular rights have been violating. And there's even a thing that they've been doing, and this is why those faith leaders were protesting massively at Minneapolis airport, as there are thousands of people that are being detained and immediately flown out of the state, which is a deliberate tactic to keep them from being able to file for relief in a Minnesota court, because the detention happened in Minnesota. That's where the relief needs to be filed, as I'm understanding the legal process here. And we started to see that in Chicago when they were there last summer and fall. This idea of, okay, well, if we want to get around the legal process.
Right.
Let's detain them and then get them out of the state, get them out of the city
Right.
as quickly as possible.
Right.
And we don't tell people where they're going. So
Right.
we have situations here where, you know, outside schools are being targeted specifically. And when we have people documenting, it's not only documenting for human rights abuses and legal abuses, but it's also to say, hey, that's somebody's kid. And when they detain them and send them away, they don't tell the families that it happened.
No,
So
please.
people are recording this to literally be able to say, hey, that's so-and-so's kid.
Right.
That's so-and-so's student in 5th grade or in 11th grade. We now have that on video so we can tell the family
Right.
where at least that the child was detained. Can't say where they went to. Apparently, a lot of folks here in Minnesota and the Twin Cities are being sent to places in Texas.
Yep.
But there's another situation where we don't have video evidence of a detainee from Minnesota sent to Texas immediately and then dies there. They're claiming in that detention facility that he committed suicide. Witnesses saying, no, that was not the case.
ICE has killed 7 people that we can document either neglect in where they were jailed wrongfully or in an accident. There was a guy on a ladder that died as an
got to
accident.
fit in a break here, but we're going to have more about this legal situation that ICE is creating across America. You're listening to The Gailey Show on AM 950 Radio, the progressive voice of Minnesota, and WCPT 820, Chicago's Progressive Talk. Welcome back to The Gailey Show. I'm John Parker. We are coming up on the top of the hour. I'm in studio with my executive producer, Jim Pounds. Today, in this Unpack This For Me episode, we're taking a look at the legal landscape here. And there are 2 cases, one in particular that has been playing out after the murder of Alex Jeffrey Preddy this past Saturday that has national implications. So twice now in Minnesota, DHS has said local investigators can't investigate this alleged murder, this alleged crime, alleged, big quotation marks there. And this past Saturday, the Minnesota investigators went to a judge and got a signed order to say, hey, DHS, you have to let us in here. You have to give us access to this scene and all of the evidence that is within it, witness and, you know, be able to interview witnesses, et cetera, et cetera. DHS said no. So they went to court on Saturday night in Minnesota, and they asked a judge, and they said, hey, whoa, what is happening here? Like, we have a right to investigate, and we are worried that they are going to destroy evidence.
Worried, yeah. Good worry.
So the judge was like, yeah, I can see this. So issued a temporary restraining order and said, okay, well, you know, you cannot do anything to destroy evidence. You have to maintain all of it. Keep everything. And that is wild because it has national implications here. If they go to Maine, where they're already starting operations in Maine, if they're allowed to get away with this, if they go to Pennsylvania, there's been rumors about Pennsylvania, wherever they go next, if they're able to get away with this idea of we can do whatever we want, we don't have to let local investigators in, we get to keep all of the evidence, there aren't going to be any investigations.
Yeah.
There will be no accountability for ICE.
Right.
And so this is where, you know, we have here allegations from the Hennepin County Attorney's Office and from the Bureau of Criminal Apprehension telling the judge, you know, quote, we have very serious concerns that Preddy's alleged firearm was not handled properly. Right. So even how they are handling evidence is not keeping up with what the standards should be of an investigation. So if they supposedly have all the evidence and they're not handling it correctly, then also we can't get to an appropriate outcome in an investigation here. There was the temporary restraining order on Saturday night. There was the full hearing on this past Monday in front of District Court Judge Tostrud, who did not issue a ruling on Monday. We're obviously keeping a tab on that to see what he is going to do. Obviously, Minnesota, both the state and the county level. So in this instance, both of these crimes happened in Hennepin County. So Hennepin County Attorney's Office and the Mary Moriarty, who's in charge there, the county attorney, trying to investigate, trying to get access to this information. And it will have huge implications moving forward for how they are or aren't going to follow the law. But it gets back to what we were talking about in the previous segment here, where judges are now calling them out for not following judicial orders. And so that is something else that we need to be talking to our Democratic officials about, if they are able to retake the House in November, if they're able to retake the Senate in November, of how are they going to hold this agency accountable. And they're going to have to do that. Otherwise, if they are allowed to get away with this, and by get away with this, there's two things to that. One, they somehow managed to get a judge or the Eighth Circuit Court of Appeals or the Supreme Court to let them get away with saying, no, we're just going to keep all the evidence. We're not going to handle it properly. And we're just going to do our own investigation and just make it all go away. And local and county state folks can't have that. Or they're going to be told you have to do it, and they're just not going to do it anyway. So how do we get them to comply with judicial orders? That's going to be the second step to all of this, because clearly, as we've laid out here this hour, multiple judges, Trump appointees, all the way back to Reagan appointees, are noticing the same pattern of behavior from this administration. There is also the case that we're watching around whether Operation Metro Surge will continue or not. So we had this is a 10th Amendment case that the state of Minnesota and the cities of Minneapolis and St. Paul brought against DHS, ICE, and the Trump administration. There were more oral arguments this past Monday. The judge in that said that the Trump administration had till last night, Wednesday night, to respond to in writing to all of the allegations that the state was making against the Trump administration. So we're also watching this, because what the Trump administration is saying is they're saying, hey, this is federal immigration law. You don't get to have a say in any of this. We can do whatever we want. So that's going to be a case that we need to watch out here, because that's not just about Minnesota. That's not just about Operation Metro Surge. That one is about, if they're allowed to get away with it here, Maine's next. Other cities are next. All right, that's going to do it for us here today. Up next on AM 950 Radio in the Twin Cities is the Matt McNeil Show. Stay tuned after that for Native Roots Radio. And then at 10 p.m. Central, Step into the Unknown with Greg Bakken on Ghost Box Radio. On WCPT 820, up next is Democracy Now! And again, you can keep the conversation going with us if you go to Blue Sky. We are at thegaleyshow.org on Blue Sky. Also, This Queer Book Saved My Life is on Blue Sky as well. It is at thisqueerbook.com, where you can catch up with new episodes and old favorites of that podcast. And Jim manages that every day with new stuff on there. So that is all for us today. Until this time tomorrow, keep it queer, America.
Keep it queer.